A viele, wenn die Welt haben, in der Welt werden Wille geworden. Und das lernen am Namen, dem Haben, dem Haku, ist ein Leger Lieblingssender, wenn wir gewähren, die E-Mail, ist mir Land in der Skol, Hotel, Kul. Und noch mehr, dem Dollar Kalreiche. Es ist nicht eine Sache, dass tun soll, wo wir da besuchen. Das ist besser, brennt ein lichtige Licht al Reiche von unter dem Wo.
We are honored tonight to have with us Rabbi Smith, who dedicates himself tirelessly to spreading awareness of Hashem among people of all walks of life. His impactful websites and videos reach countless others, making a profound impact on many. Rabbi Smith will impart to us the power of living Uladim. Please welcome Rabbi Smith.
Good Yom Tov. I was warned that the ceiling was very low here. It's actually very difficult to say anything because the Rebbe was just speaking about what I wanted to address tonight. And if you follow the last words, the Rebbe is really in the middle of a sentence, but he's saying that we don't have to look in the darkness for the answers. We don't have to, the light is above our head. The light is already given to us, the light of the Geula, the light of who we really are. I'd like to start by first saying that when we come here together for Farbringen, the intention of the Rebbe and for intention of the Farbringen is that we should all come out as different people. We're not meant to come out the same or with a new story or an inspiring word. That's also a good thing, but really it's meant to be that we're going to be completely changed and come out as completely different people. I wanted to start, besides saying Good Yom Tov, and Pesach L'Bracha, that everyone should get benched with a good year, and she could bench with the good Zuma, and she could bench with being able to fulfill the Rebbe's instructions for us in our generation, but also to mention, as was probably mentioned earlier, this is Ili Nishmas Menachem Mendel ben Avner Chaim, as Zayta to David Mincha, was his father just a few minutes ago, and Selah Chaim, Ili Nishmasei, and we have to understand that every person, it says that when a person says Kaddish, it explains in this forum, the Halakha forum, that a person says Kaddish to somebody that's passed on, we're really saying that we're prepared to step into their place and fulfill their mission, that they fulfilled their time and their point that they were sent into this world to do, and we have to bring it to completion. So he should have a neshama, and we should be able to bring to completion what the Nevi'im have prophesied, or what everyone since Adam Rishon was looking forward to, which is the Gula Mitzvah Shalom and Take Mamish. So, in regards to what the Rebbe is just saying now, the Rebbe emphasizes time and time again that when we hear stories of our Rebbeim, Tzaddikim L'chlal and Rebbeim, our Rebbeim, these are not stories for us to put the Rebbeim on a pedestal and to feel that they're somehow very high, unachievable, they have these special milas, they're so unique, although we see from the stories the special qualities that they have. But the Rebbe says that really the stories of the Rebbeim are stories about us. The Rebbe, in every story, says it's a Mesinas Kreach. It's a giving of strength for us to actually live on that level. Now, some of you are going to say, because maybe you heard it in a Farbringen one time, who are we and who, all these kind of things. But the fact of the matter is, the Rebbe does not teach us that way. The Rebbe says in the first Ma'amar Bas Lagani, when will my actions reach the actions of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? It's an expectation that I can conduct myself accordingly. So everything that we hear tonight about the Frierdiker Rebbe is really a lesson for ourselves and actually an insight for ourselves for the Geula and for what we're supposed to be doing right now. So what is Yud-based Yud Gimel is really teaching us? We hear so many different stories of the Frierdiker Rebbe's incredible Mesiras Nefesh. And I want to suggest that the story is really a story behind the story. We have the external actions of the Frierdiker Rebbe, his insistence on continuing to spread Yiddishkeit, but what was really going on inside of him? That's what we have to know. That's what we have to look for in order for us to be able to accomplish the same things that the Frierdiker Rebbe set as an example for us. So one of the svarim that the Rebbe constantly emphasized people should learn is a sefer called Chavos Ulevavis, the duties of the heart. And if you look at the duties of the heart in Chavos Ulevavis, which hopefully you'll learn more than just Shar V'Chacham, he says over there, the Baal of Chavos Ulevavis says that the entire purpose of creation is that each one of us should reach a state and live in a state of Menuchas Nefesh. that the tranquility of our souls is the real state that we're meant to be in at all times, in all places, in all circumstances. And that's actually what Mashiach, that's what the Geula looks like. The Geula is not an external process, that it's actually an internal process, that when we are living at that level of menuchas and nefesh and total tranquility, the world around us will reflect our tranquility. This is what we are all meaning to be coming home to who we really are, this internal tranquility that is not affected by anything, any of the obstacles in us or outside of us. Nothing can scare us, nothing can knock us off track. We say that Shabbos is Yom Menucha. It's a day when we're not supposed to have any thoughts about the rest of the world. It says even when Shabbos comes, you're supposed to feel that all your malacha is done for you. Everything's done. There's nothing else that could be done. What is Yemaisa Mashiach? Yom Shekolei Shabbos. It's a time of complete menucha, but that menucha is in us already. The Rebbe was just saying that it's not, you don't have to go looking in the darkness. The answer that from Mashiach has to be something that is absolutely attainable by each one of us exactly the way we are. Meaning to say, it can't be a complicated mathematical formula or a complicated sugya in the Gemara that only some of us maybe know, few people understand. It has to be something that every single human being can access and fall into just the way they are, that is accessible to us. So everything that the Chachamim explain, that everything that we do, all the mitzvahs of the Torah, are really in service of coming to this menuchas and nefesh. And this is really our home state. Now in everything in life there's theory and there's practice. The theory of this concept of menuchas and nefesh is actually explained in Shara Yichud Emunah from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe pours out his soul to write for a 16 or 17-year-old, but Shara Yichud Emunah was written for a 16 or 17-year-old. So we'll see how accessible what we're talking about is meant to be. You don't have to be a big, old, wise person. The wisdom can come to you at any moment. As a nar, as a young person, you can grasp this. And if you've missed it until now, I want to suggest that tonight you can grasp on to what the Alter Rebbe is really saying in Tanya. In addition, there's practice. And the practice of Shari Emunah is the experience, the Rishimas HaMaiser, the recounting that the Frierdiker Rebbe gives us of his experience in prison. That is practical applied Tanya of Shari Emunah. So what is Shari Emunah? There's two words in the title, Shar HaYichud v'Ha'amunah. Yichud means that there's nothing besides the Eibishter. Ein Oid. Ein Oid, the Rebbe says, explains, is even higher than Ein Milvadoi. There's not even a Milvadoi, there's nothing else. There's nothing else even to talk about. There's no other existence. The second word is Amunah, v'Ha'amunah. People think that Ha'amunah means faith, and that you have to work to have faith. That's not what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Alter Rebbe says faith is just something we have automatically. The Amunah part is the training, Lashon Ayman, the training to block, deny, and refuse to take seriously anything that would come and interfere with our inner tranquility. That's what a parent is supposed to train his child to do, or her child. We're supposed to train our children how to deal with all the difficulties of life. So we have a baby crying over here. This is a major crisis for the baby. The mother's job is to come and reassure the baby that everything is going to be okay. This looks like a disaster, but it's really, the Eibush is taking care of you. I'm just your representative, his representative. As you go through life and you scrape your knee, your parent comforts you and says it's going to be okay. Nothing is under threat over here. There's never a threat to who you really are, because what you really are is your neshama. So Emunah is about being in a state of denial of anything that would come and take away from your inner tranquility. If someone comes and tells you anything that does not lead you to a state of tranquility, your automatic response is to reject it. I reject what you have to say. I deny what you have to say. I don't even know what you're talking about. It doesn't matter to me what you're talking about, because I know that implanted in me is a divine sense of tranquility. So whatever it is irrelevant to me, what your explanation is, whether it's an explanation, some philosophical thing, or something about the world, or some scary story of what's going on. All those things are completely irrelevant by definition, because you know that it's false because it contradicts your internal state of tranquility. So how do we live this? The Alter Rebbe says in Shai Yichud that it says Havgadol, the creation of us, is, in the word in the Shemona Esrei, Havgadol, is the Eibishter's unlimited loving kindness for every single one of us, to lovingly and intentionally recreate each one of us at every single moment from nothing. We are going through a state of non-existence and coming back into existence at every single moment, and the Eibishter is choosing to create you and you and you, and each one of us is being intentionally created. So there's no possibility that you could suffer any harm. There's no possibility that anything could be wrong with you or be done wrong to you. It's impossible, because the Eibishter is creating you at every single instant. And it's with complete love. He says it's the Eibishter's absolute, unrestricted, it's the only unconditional love in existence, is the Eibishter's love for every single one of us. As you go home, learn Perek Dalet Nishei Emunah. See what the Alter Rebbe is pouring his soul into, letting us know that we have the ultimate validation for our existence. We do not need validation from any other human being to know that our existence is worthwhile. And we have the ultimate tranquility. Because the fact that I'm standing here means that the Eibishter chose to lovingly recreate me at this very instant in time. And I do not have anything to worry about, and nor do you. That's the ultimate tranquility. So if we now read and learn the Shimas HaMaisa, this account of the Frierdiker Rebbe's imprisonment, with Shaykh Emunah, what the Alter Rebbe is telling us in mind, we see a completely different story. It's a story of the ultimate tranquility. The Frierdiker Rebbe was in a state of completely seeing that everything that was created, including his captors, including the people rushing into his apartment, every single detail, the walls of the prison, the rats and the worms on the walls, every single thing was created intentionally by the Eibishter lovingly at that moment in time. When the inquisitors came in, the interrogators came in, Nachmanson and the other people came in, they're screaming, Schneerson, Schneerson, where's Schneerson? The Frierdiker Rebbe did not bat an eye, he just said, you know where you are, you know this is the house of Schneerson. Why are you making such a big tumult? Because he understood that the technique of a mullik is to try to disturb our tranquility. Once we become disturbed and into a heightened, elevated emotional state of disturbance, and we start taking seriously the insecure thoughts, then we become prey to a mullik and coming to say, worry about this, and what about this, and what about this doubt, and what's going to happen next. And the Frierdiker Rebbe understood that in order to combat Amalek and set an example for all of us, he had to deny every single move they made. He wasn't defying them because he was upset at them and angry at them. He was defying them because he couldn't do anything other than stay calm. So he writes about how all the terrible, torturous things that they did and how they, spoke so cruelly and they violent speaking and violent actions against them. He said, this is the techniques to try to scare the prisoners. And he said, I'm not going to do that. Now, in the midst of the Shimas HaMaisa, if you've read it, I encourage everyone to look at it, the Seichel is in English Prince in Prison, you're going to see a shocking thing. Right in the middle of the Frierdiker Rebbe's account of this prison and what's going on over there, all of a sudden he launches into a whole discussion of the history of Chassidus from the times of the Baal Shem Tov. And then he launches into a whole history of his childhood. You have to ask yourself, and then it stops suddenly. It says, this is all we have in the manuscript. 1 second. I want to read about the story of his imprisonment. I mean, I'm all into hearing the history of Chabad, and I want to hear what the Frierdiker Rebbe's childhood. But what in the world does this have to do with hearing about the account of his imprisonment? So the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote everything with exact detail. And the answer is that he was explaining to us how he came to have this settled ability to stay connected to the Eibishter no matter what was happening around him. It was because he was connected to the Baal Shem Tov and all the Rebbeim after him. The Baal Shem Tov set out to implant in us this knowledge that there's nothing besides the Eibishter. Therefore, he did not have any he did not allow any opportunity. He had lots of opportunities, but he did not allow them to become disturbed. But what about his personal history? What does this personal history of his childhood have to do with us? So, you might say that for you, tranquility is very hard. Because, maybe for example, you're sitting in a prison. Well, he already addressed that. He said you can handle anything. A person can be in a prison and nothing can disturb them. Your family's in a state of chaos. He writes about the chaos that he left his family in. He stayed tranquil. What about your upbringing? What about your parents and the way they treated you and how you were as a child? Do you know that the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in very, very pained language about how he felt for a number of years like he didn't have a father? It's absolutely painful to read what he says. He talks about how torturous it was. And that did not stop the Frierdiker Rebbe. Fortunately, his father reappeared in his life. Remember, Chabad reappeared in his life. He writes about that with great gratitude. But it's very clear that he was able to be tranquil no matter what his past held. What about your money situation? Let's say your money's not so, you don't have as much money as you are hoping. The Rebbe addresses that also. He talks about the tremendous financial turbulence in his family, how they went from a state of wealth. The Rebbetzin and Rivka, after the Rebbe Marash was Nistalik, had tremendous wealth. She funded the entire family of Rebbeim, but that money ended. And the poverty got so bad that his father, the Rebbe Shab, could not even pay him the 5 kopek that he gave him from memorizing Mishnayos. And it got worse. Little Yosef Yitzhak, our Rebbe, wanted to buy a watch so that he could tell the time and stick to strict Siddharim to serve the Eibishter. And as he was going, wanted to buy this watch, a Yid came in and said he needs to borrow money. And the Rebbe was playing with this coin. And so his father, Rebbe Shab, said to him, it's more important to lend the Yid money, it's even better than tzedakah. It's even more important than tzedakah. So it was difficult for the Rebbe, and he lent the money. And guess what? There's no happy ending. The Yid who borrowed the money did not pay it back. And when the Rebbe went to collect it from him, he said, that's old news. There's no chance you're going to get it back. Okay, so the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe suffered from financial deprivation. But that didn't stop him from being tranquil. What about your husband and the father of your children? What happens if he's not exactly the way you think things should be? If you read carefully the Beshimas HaMaisa, the turning point in the Frierdiker Rebbe's life was when his uncertainty and doubts about his own father were resolved by his grandmother. And she said to him, your father is a tzaddik and a chassid. And he writes with great emotion how that completely grounded him and settled him for life. So you have to understand that the husband, the father of your children is also a tzaddik and a chassid. No matter what ways you have a list and a way of looking at him and so on and so forth, the Rebbe teaches us, you have to look at every person like they're a tzaddik. That's the truth of the matter. It's not, the Eibishter already forgave the person for all his, whatever it is. The Eibishter forgives him immediately, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. And we're learning now Geras HaTshuva, where there's a few things that take a little effort on Yom Kippur. But the reality is that the kids have to know that their father is a tzaddik and a chassid. Your reservations are not relevant. The kids need to know their father's a tzaddik and a chassid. You have to tell them. And we see that in the schools of Nashim Contagious, we're the Golem in Mitzrayim, and we're going to be redeemed now. If you think that your husband is not on the level that you want him to, I'd like you to think about what the husbands were like in Mitzrayim. They were not available, they were not interested, they thought it was a crazy idea to have kids, and they were stuck in the Memtes Mashari Tuma. There wasn't even a 12-step program for them, or that could help them. And yet the women, the Nashim Tzidkanias, saw that they were worthy of being fathers. Because they saw them like the Eibishter sees them. That these men were, despite all their faults and the fact that they're the ones that invited the Shibud in the first place, and they're the ones that gave up on Bris Milah, and you come with a whole list of tinus. But that didn't change the Nashim Tzidkanias the way they looked at them, and they saw that these were tzaddikim and chassidim, and they were worthy of being fathers. But now we have another obstacle to this tranquility, and that's you. Okay, so we took care of the general situation, we took care of your upbringing, your money, your family. But what about you? So every person has to know that they're also a tzaddik and a chassid. Every person has to take to heart what the Rebbe is saying, that we're all being created intentionally by the Eibishter at every moment. And every attempt is being made to disturb your tranquility and your sense of well-being. One of the things that the Frierdiker Rebbe writes over there is that one of his cruel prisoner guards made reference to his weight. That he was a little bit stocky. How many people are walking around with the false impression that there's something wrong with them because they don't meet a scale of weight, that they're somehow overweight? They're walking around all day feeling bad with every bite that they take. This is a cruel imposition on ourselves. The Eibishter created us exactly the way we are, to be alive and to be a menuchas nefesh, to have simchas achayim. How dare we throw that away and say, Eibishter, I can't live in that moment of tranquility. I have to worry about this. I have to worry about all these different things. We are able to reject any suggestion that would take us out of a tranquility. That is the power of choice in our thinking that the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. We do not have to tolerate any negative thought, and we start by rejecting all negative thoughts about ourselves. The Shar, the beginning of Avedis Hatanya, the Avedis Hashem through the Sefer Hatanya, is the end of Perek Chav Vav, chapter 26, which says it's forbidden to think any negative thought about yourself under any circumstances. Maybe if you read a Geras Tshuva and you set for yourself special times and you know how to do it correctly, you could do some thinking about how you could have done some things better, but you'll end up in a tremendous state of joy about yourself. But for the rest of us who haven't figured out how to do that yet, it is absolutely forbidden to tolerate any negative thought about yourself under any circumstances. No matter, the Alter Rebbe says, how serious you think the sin is. This is what Tanya is coming to tell us. This is the Geula, this is the redemption from Mitzrayim, this is the redemption from all these constructs that we have about others and about ourselves that keep us in a state of darkness. But the Rebbe says, the answer is not in the darkness. You will never find the answer by going and discussing what happened in your childhood, or what your husband said to you, or what you wish was different about yourself. The answer is moving past all those things. The answer is saying, I refuse. I have the authority of the Alter Rebbe to refuse any single negative thought about myself. So this, when we ignore, when we reject, when we deny any negativity coming towards us, we refuse to accept the possibility that we are going to tolerate an insecure thought. This is the tranquility that all of Torah is coming to teach us. And from that flows the Rebbe's clarity and our clarity. This, if you look in the Sichos of the Rebbe is saying one point. If you open every letter in Igros Kodesh, it's all saying the same thing. It's saying, this is an opportunity for you to reconnect to who you really are, that you are completely one with the Eibishter, and there's nothing that should possibly be disturbing you. It's all one letter. It's all saying the same thing. In fact, if you want to help somebody and help yourself, all you need to do is suggest to them that they become quiet. And in the quiet, they will find the answer, because it's the tranquility itself that's the answer. There is no answer in the darkness, like the Rebbe is saying. There's a light above your head. That's the light of the Eibishter. And the Rebbe Maharash takes it a step further, the Divan Tanya, and says that the power of the light that's built into you is so great, it's actually impossible for you to ever do anything against what the Eibishter intends for you to do for your well-being. It's only when you forget that it's possible to do something else. But if you just remember, the Eibishter has put in me this part of himself, it is impossible, the Rebbe Maharash says. And we know that the Rebbe, when they asked him, what does he learn? He learns the Rebbe Maharash. It is impossible for any of us to ever do anything. And that's against what the Eibishter has told us is for our own best interest. And this is exactly what Mashiach looks like. When it becomes so clear to us who we really are, we will not even consider the possibility. We don't have a milchama with our nefesh bahamas. There is no battle, the Rebbe Maharash says, between our nefesh halakis and nefesh bahamas, when we know what the truth is. So this is the Gula. The Rebbe's, we think that the Gula is outside of us, that someone's going to come and like lift us up. That's actually not a Jewish concept. The Torah concept is, the Torah is teaching us that the Geula is inside of each one of us. The redemption, the clarity is already inside of us. What the Nevi'im are talking about is inside of us. That the transformation of the world, that the Rebbe is leading us inside to see that we have the ability right now to actually make choices that are exactly the same choices that you're going to make when the Geula is revealed in a complete way that it's reached every human being. So that leads us to the conclusion of understanding what's the call of the hour for us. Since we have this is a tremendous schus to be here with Nashim Contagious, the central mitzvah that the Frierdiker Rebbe emphasizes, and that we see that all the Chachamim from all generations emphasizes, the mitzvah of bringing children into the world. You have to understand that all the thoughts that come to a person's mind of why to delay marriage are thoughts that are coming from Amalek. They're coming from Suffolk. They're not coming from Torah. The Rebbe spent so much time to shine a light of Torah and all the false ideologies that are surrounding us on every bus stop and on every book and in everything that people are exposing themselves. And God forbid if a person goes to expose themselves to what they're saying in college. I'll just tell you, I have a dear friend of mine. He went to college and he started statistics. He's an accountant. And the first class that the statistics professor taught was about how the world has too many people. God forbid. And this is something that has a tremendous negative effect on people. And the propaganda is we don't see ourselves as under the pressure so much of the Soviet Union as the Frierdiker Rebbe, but we are under that pressure. The answer of the Nashim Tzidkanios in Mitzrayim was to ignore the fact, even though it was an established fact that their baby might be murdered within hours of being given birth to the baby, and to nevertheless go through all the trouble to persuade their husbands and to deliver that child and face the possibility of that sorrow of losing their child, and they went ahead and had those children anyways. That's what the Rebbe is talking about, the Nashim Tzidkanios of this generation, is the mitzvah is to bring children into the world. Over all the eternal opposition, over all the opposition of, well, how are we going to afford this, and we can't afford this, and over all the opposition of the school on Hala that wants to charge you more money than most people in the world make in 10 years, and all the opposition from all the people that are looking at you funny like you're onto your whatever number child it is. These are all the lies of the world, and the Frierdiker Rebbe is showing us the example on Yud Beis Yud Tammuz. Those things do not exist. I deny the reality of those things. They're not going to affect me. All their numbers are lies. The world population right now is 8 billion. It should be 80 billion. 80 billion people would be alive right now if 500 million had not been killed in the Holocaust and World War I and World War II and the forced abortions in China and Cuba and all these places in the world. There's 70 million abortions every year in the world. And the Rebbe is calling on us urgently to bring as many children into the world as possible, because the Shekhinah only dwells on a human being. There is no Shekhinah in the world without the human being. The Tzelem Elokim is on the human being. And if you are, for whatever reason, now older, now your job is to help the younger generation have children, set up every possible way to encourage people so that every possible thing is done in this community. It's very nice they give food and all kinds of things, but what about setting up systems to give mothers, newborn mothers, since there's no nuclear families, are very hard to find. What about some sort of system where a mother could take a nap in the afternoon? A proper amount of sleep would restore most of the sanity for the human population. And this is something that's really very, very vital. We have to understand that we have to take urgent action on this. The other thing that the Rebbe emphasized non-stop from 1980, from Tavshin Mem Aleph, was that for us to have the Geula, every single human being has to be on board. Why? Because the Geula is about every single human being. The reason that we are gifted with Eretz HaKodesh and we're gifted with the Beis HaMikdash is because we are the stewards for the entire world of the message of Ein Oid. This is our responsibility. The Rebbe said that we have to teach Shari Yichud V'Emunah that I just was addressing earlier. We have to teach that to the non-Jews, because that's why the Alter Rebbe wrote it. And I'll take it a step further to tie together having children and what the Rebbe is saying. We all know there's a famous story of the Alter Rebbe that he left on Yom Kippur in the middle of davening to go and chop wood for a woman who had just given birth and needed food and heat. The Rebbe brings that in Masi Lagani. In the Tavshin Mem, the Rebbe said, I'm revealing to you the real reason for this story. The real reason for this story is for you to know that you have to go to your neighbors, and your non-Jewish neighbors, and care about them enough to teach them that there's a God in the world. Because you know, because you are zeicha to learn Tanya, that you are here for a reason. You're totally validated, and you have a reason for your existence because you're being brought into existence at every moment. But the people walking in the street, you can see from the way they dress and the way they conduct themselves and the way they cross the street in front of cars, that they don't have that message. No one else is teaching it to them. So the Rebbe says that our job is to expand this message into the entire world. That is what Mashiach is going to do. If you look carefully at the Rambam, he says there's no change between now and when Mashiach comes other than Shibud Malchus, the dominance of the non-Jewish nations. The dominance of the non-Jewish nations is in our head. It's only because we bought into the lie of Gullus to believe that somehow all these forces are forces. But the Rebbe says they're all waiting for us to show them what we just talked about here. So the practical application of that is for you, each one of you, to take upon yourself a hachlata. And I know there's other hachlata that wasn't given the sheet to announce the program, but hopefully it's going to be announced. Okay. So the importance of each one of you taking up this is not something you could delegate. The Rebbe says you can't delegate this to anybody else. And he said that you can't delegate to anyone else, and you do not need anyone's permission to do this. Your job as a child of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, is to mefarsen alakus in the entire world. And that starts right here in the Dalet Amos of Kansi Hashem Asabrachim. So the page I was handed says, as women and Nashim Contagious, we are the ones who will bring Mashiach. It's exactly right. We just talked about two of the major things that have to be taken on and increased in. So women who will take on a hachlata by the end of the event will be getting entered into a raffle to win $1 of the Rebbe. So you don't actually have to pay an admission fee, I guess, for that. That's very nice. I was wondering how much it was supposed to cost for the raffle, but I see the cost is making a hachlata to do something that you're divinely endowed with to do anyways. What's the hachlata? To open a summer shir that will be at least 5 times, or join an existing shir class 5 times this summer. Or go on Mitzrayim 5 times this summer and text your hachlata to 347-278-4284 to enter the raffle of $1 of the Rebbe. So that's the hachlata. So in Mitzvah Shem, the Rebbe says that in Parshas Pinchas, that the young generation has to act like Pinchas. We can't look and see what the older generation is doing. Their silence on any one of these things in the face of what we're facing today is not relevant to our generation. And I see so many young people here. The young generation, the Rebbe says, has the responsibility to take on this with complete youthful vigor, to set clearly in the world what the message of the Eibishter is. And in Mitzvah Shem, we should be zeicha to accomplish this and to take this to heart. And I want to just share with you one last thing on a personal note. That everything that I'm sharing with you tonight, or most about it, the Shaykh Hamuna, I only learned, even though I learned Shaykh Hamuna for decades, I only learned this by teaching non-Jew Shaykh Hamuna. Because when I had sat down with them and I had to explain to them the concepts of Shaykh Hamuna, and realized that the Alter Rebbe was explaining the simplest concepts for the simplest people with no background whatsoever, it occurred to me it has to be so simple that even I can understand it. And this is the gift that you get when you follow the Rebbe's instructions. Life will no longer be complex. Life is very simple. There'll be no more darkness. The darkness is not where the answers are. The answers are in following the Rebbe's example, that he wants us to act like him and like the Frierdiker Rebbe. And I have a website, rabbismith.org, if you're interested in, we have classes for non-Jews and for Yidden, also to learn how to be the Rebbe's shliach, to take this message to the entire world. And we should be zeicha to, as the Rebbetzin begs the Rebbe, that her father's Mesiras Nefesh cannot go to waste. And on that basis, she was able to convince him that he should become our Rebbe. So the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin and all the Rebbeim are begging us not to let their Mesiras Nefesh go to waste. And that we should step up to the plate, to each one of us be the Rebbe's shliach, shliach Adam Kamesa. We are meant to be each one the Rebbe in our Daled Amos, in every place that our voice reaches, to represent what the Rebbe has to say and what the Rebbe is saying right now, in real time, to every single human being. And that, my friends, is the gula. When we step up to the plate, when you step up to the plate, that is what Mashiach looks like. The entire world is ready. The Rebbe said the entire world is demanding from us to speak in this way to the entire world, to let them know what the Torah has said from the beginning of time. And the entire world will recognize that, and will have a basic-based tefillah, Yikara Kol Ha'omim, a house of prayer, which will be a house of prayer for the entire nation, the entire world. And we will be zeicher to have all the Yidden, the Kitzur V'ron the Shechnei offer for the Menachem Mendel, Ben Avner Kayin, and we'll be together with all the Rebbeim in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, in Har HaBayis, in the Beis HaMikdash, with the same tranquility in a permanent way that we're able to accomplish right now and bring to every single human being, that there's not even a pin in the dachas, as the Rebbe says in Atat Tetzaveh. There's not even one person in the Bronx who is not living exactly with the same tranquility as the Frierdiker Rebbe. That's what Mashiach looks like, and in Mitzvah Shem, we will accomplish that now. Time to jump.
Thank you, Rabbi Smith.